Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.
Good afternoon and welcome to Working for You. I am Roy Williams. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's program, wherever you are in the world. We appreciate your company from week to week. Today we will be discussing a very important topic, that of breastfeeding, and how important that is to the care of children. I have with me a panel of nurses who will be discussing this very important topic. I have with me Nurse Naomi Brown Bill, who is a staff nurse at the Joseph N. France Hospital Nursery. Welcome, Naomi.
Thank you.
I also have with me breastfeeding coordinator. Naomi, you're also the breastfeeding coordinator. And I have Nurse Mary Keynes, who is clinical instructor. Welcome, Nurse Mary.
Thank you.
And I have Nurse Jacqueline Duncan, who is assistant nurse manager of the maternity unit at the Joseph N. France General Hospital. Welcome.
Good afternoon and thank you.
Right. Of course, you know, the early stages, from what I was taught when I did some psychology at university, that the early stages of a child's life are extremely important.
Yes, it is.
Looking at psychologists like Erik Erikson and his psychosocial development, stages of psychosocial development, and how important that is, between, the birth of the child and 1.5 years, and how important that the child develops distrust. So it's trust versus mistrust, and how important the mother's role is in the life of that child to develop distrust or to develop mistrust for that bonding. And then, of course, again, you had people like Sigmund Freud, who spoke about the psychosocial, the stages of psychosexual, development, and spoke about that oral stage, where you have children always putting things in their mouth and so on, because they want to feel comfort and all of that sort of a thing. So those early stages of the child's life is extremely important, and the mother is the primary caregiver, and plays an extremely important role in the life of the child, the early stages of development. Now, of course, annually, you have what you call World Breastfeeding Week. Breastfeeding is so important that they have an entire week that is dedicated towards it. So I would like you to tell us, what is World Breastfeeding Week?
Okay. Naomi Brownbell, breastfeeding coordinator. Breastfeeding Week is a week where we celebrate breastfeeding, newborn babies, mothers. We will be celebrating Breastfeeding Week from August 18th to August 24th of this year. Our theme for breastfeeding this year is Protect Breastfeeding in the Workplace. And we have a list of activities that we'll be performing during that week. And we are hoping that it will help to promote breastfeeding and create some awareness to our communities. So for this week, what we have planned is, we have to open the week. And for opening that week, the Minister of Health will do the opening on Sunday, the 18th of August. Then we have some training for our maternity and nurses staff.
Excuse me.
And also our community nurses. In order for us to promote breastfeeding and advocate for it, we have to have the knowledge that is necessary about breastfeeding so that we can answer questions, we can offer support, and so forth. So that training will be 20-hour training on the Baby Friendly Hospital initiative, which we'll talk some more about later. And it will be geared towards our nurses. We also have some training that will be taking place also in Nevis during that time as well. And throughout the entire week of Breastfeeding Week, we have videos promoting breastfeeding, where we did breastfeeding animation. So that will be aired throughout the islands. In St. Kitts and Nevis, you'll be able to see it at eateries and so forth. We target in places that we know people attend and they will be able to see and understand it. Also at the St. Kitts Nevis ferry terminals, and also at the Pelican Mall in St. Kitts. Also throughout that week, we did a documentary where it's an informative documentary about the Baby Friendly Hospital initiative. Some persons have never heard of it, so they will get to know more about it, what it's about, what are our plans in terms of making the hospital a baby-friendly hospital. So that documentary will be displayed during the entire week at different areas, such as our health centers, our healthcare facilities like doctor offices, and even workplaces during throughout the island. So those are just some of our plans that we have so far.
Okay, now World Breastfeeding Week. I know you have your local celebration of it, but when is it celebrated on the world level? Since August 1st to 7th.
August 1st to 7th.
It's the 1st to the 7th.
Is World Breastfeeding Week. Yes.
Yes.
But we celebrate it after that date because August is usually a festive time for the Federation. And during that first week is usually times where we have culturama and so forth.
Okay.
So that is why we celebrate it on a later date, which is the 18th.
Right. Okay. Now, with all that you would have outlined, the activities that you have planned, and all of that sort of a thing. Now, what is the objective really of the week? What are you trying to achieve?
Well, what we want to do with this week is to educate our community, to make them more aware of breastfeeding, why is it important, why we would love for them to breastfeed, and also to clear up some of the concerns that some persons, mothers, grandmothers, fathers, that they may have about breastfeeding. So it's basically to create a general awareness about breastfeeding. Now, majority of us, we have heard of breastfeeding and we have our own concerns. We have our own myths, because we hear a lot of myths at working at the hospital. And so we're hoping that these animations and documentaries and all these informative sessions that we'll be hosting, we hope to clear up all of that. So with knowledge comes power. So we're giving the people knowledge so that they could help us to advocate for breastfeeding as well.
Right, and of course you you want to improve the overall health of
the
babies,
yes,
around the world.
yes,
And of course you want to have healthy babies, but to have healthy babies you must have healthy mothers too,
yes,
and healthy fathers.
yes.
We don't forget that.
No.
Because even though the father does not, breastfeed the baby, the father plays a pivotal role.
Yes.
And I really want to hear what the pivotal role of the father is, because I was told that sometimes in the absence of a mother, just holding the child
Yes.
next to the father's breast,
Yes.
and I say breast because men have breasts,
Yes, they do.
next to the father's breast gives that child the comfort
Security.
and the
Bonding.
security, the bonding,
Security.
the trust that we spoke about, especially with the psychosocial stages of Erik Erikson. The trust for the first stage, the trust versus the trust and mistrust.
Yes.
So. Okay, so some of the activities. Now, why do we want to improve on breastfeeding?
Well, breastfeeding, as we say, it's very important in the child development. Not only for the child, but also for the parents. And parents, we say fathers. And as right now, we are having fathers very involved in breastfeeding. So, when we say we are advocating for breastfeeding, it's because from a healthy baby, we can have a healthy nation. With less complication, less adulthood, diseases, hypertension, hypertension, diabetes, even cancers, obesity. And that is one of our major problems with children that is not really breastfed. They become obese from what the supplementary feeds can do to them. So this is one of the primary functions of the breastfeeding and why we want to improve on breastfeeding.
Okay. Good. So, when we speak about breastfeeding, we are talking about the mother, we are talking about the baby, we are talking about the community, and we are talking about the workplace.
Yes.
So many things that, breastfeeding involves and can benefit. Now, what are some of the benefits of breastfeeding specifically to the mother and the baby? We'll look at the community and workplace later.
Well, the benefit of breastfeeding to the mom is that we have something that we say, well, it controls the post-delivery bleeding. And so if that is controlled, she would not probably end up with anemia, which is a low blood hemoglobin count due to excessive bleeding. So that is one of the major benefits. It delays the next pregnancy. Once they exclusively breastfeed, they can delay the next pregnancy. There's emotional bonding on behalf of the baby and the mom. Breastfeeding needs no preparation, nothing, no expense or anything like that. The mom just breastfeed, the baby is satisfied, and all is well. And it helps the mom to lose weight and control her weight as well.
What about the baby? What are the benefits to the baby?
Well, that's the major one as well. Once the baby is breastfed, and we like to say exclusive breastfeeding, that is 6 months and up to a year and a half of baby's first life. It's so beneficial that baby doesn't need any other feed, not even a sip of water. Not even water, baby gains weight, baby doesn't have any less chance of developing communicable diseases, and baby is healthier. The outcome as well for higher HQ has been proven.
A higher IQ.
IQ has been proven.
Okay, so you're talking about the
further on in life,
the formation of the brain.
Yes.
You're talking about the development of the physical structure
Yes.
of the child, the bones and the teeth and
Yes.
all of that sort of a thing because of calcium that from the milk,
The milk from the mom.
the milk from the mother. Now, how can you get the community to understand the importance of breastfeeding? Because, of course, nowadays what you have is that you have a lot of substitutes for breastfeeding.
Yes.
There are a lot of substitutes.
One too many.
And in fact, there's a whole market for it. You have all these things that you can buy and so on.
Yes.
Yes.
Can they replace the breastfeeding from the mom?
Never.
Why?
There are substitutes. It's not original. They are made, man-made, compiled together.
Plant and animal based versus human based.
And that component that we spoke about in terms of the bonding,
Yes.
Yes.
It interrupts
when
with the bonding
yes,
with the mommy.
yes.
it interrupts.
baby.
Takes away from all of that.
It's not the same. You're not having the same human connection when you substitute feeding. When you're breastfeeding, you have the general touch, the baby is feeling the mother's touch and so forth. But when you are substitute feeding, you're using a device, and in that device interrupts the physical touch that you'll be having as you breastfeed. The hormones that plays a part when you're breastfeeding, it is not stimulated, so you don't have the human touch that you should have when you're feeding the baby. So it's not the same. Although they may advocate that they have this amount of nutrients and so forth, it is still not the same as breastfeeding.
It doesn't have the same potency. Okay. Now, what is exclusive breastfeeding?
Oh, as we say, exclusive breastfeeding is breastfeeding of the infant from day one of birth within the first half hour of birth. Until up to exclusively for 6 months and up to the first year and a half. Thus, we have this plaque that as you enter maternity, you would see this behind our nursing station. So all our visitors, all our moms to be, all our moms, once they come to the station, they will see this plaque advertising for the BFHI exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months.
And also, when we say exclusive, we mean no water, no juices, no glucose, just breast milk.
alone.
Just breast
Just
milk
breast
alone.
milk. No water, no juices, no
Nothing.
formulas, nothing. Just breast
Only
milk.
breastfeed,
For up
only
to
only
6
breast
months.
milk.
Yes.
For the
And
first
that
six
and
months.
for the
first
first
6
6
months of
months. And that is exclusive breastfeeding.
And that is something we advocate very strongly for.
Yes.
And I'm glad to say you don't hear much about the fathers, but
They are
currently we
important.
having the fathers who are also
board.
pushing for
They are on
breastfeeding.
board.
So we commend them, and we want them to continue working with us with the breastfeeding. They really do strive for the babies to be breastfed.
Breastfed.
So we commend them for that.
Okay, now something I've seen, and sometimes it appears to be a bit taboo. For example, you may have a mother on the bus, or you may have a mother in church, and the child wants to be breastfed. Because sometimes when children are crying, when the child is crying in church or when the child is crying on the bus and you have the child, sometimes the child is a need that the child has. The child wants to be comforted. The child is hungry, and so therefore he has a desire
To be breastfed.
to be breastfed. Is it culturally acceptable to take the breast out and to breastfeed the child on the bus or in the church?
If it's cultural acceptable,
If it's culturally
Culturally,
acceptable,
Yes.
I would think it is.
Yes.
right?
People should be able to
Yes,
breastfeed.
you should be able to
anywhere.
breastfeed anywhere, regardless of the place you are.
Right. No, I say that because some societies and so on,
You know,
think
sometimes
it's
it's found
offensive,
upon.
they feel that it is
Yes.
it is offensive. It is
Offensive.
offensive
Showing
to
the
do
breast.
that. You are showing the breast.
Yes.
Yes. Some
You
cultures-
understand?
So
Yeah.
we advise moms when they're in public, once they have a rag, they can always cover the area, the breast, so it's more discreet for the onlooker. It's not that we're not gonna say do not breastfeed, but if you're gonna provide the feed for the infant, just let it be discreet for those who are looking on. So you just take a blanket and cover over.
Okay.
But what we do, we also remind them that not having a rag or something to cover the breast doesn't mean that if the baby is hungry you don't feed. You still go ahead and feed the baby.
Right, because you have to cater to the needs of the child.
Yes.
To cater to the needs of the baby. Right. Now.
And must I add, also there are some places we're getting to the culture where places will provide an area that you can go ahead and breastfeed. The churches, they have a sitting area that you can go and breastfeed.
Right. So you don't have to do it in front of everybody. There's a room in which you can go.
Yes.
And that you can do it.
That is something that we love to see happen in our federation, where they provide an area, whether you're in town and your baby wants to breastfeed. I would like to see them to provide an area where you can go and breastfeed comfortably.
Because it gives you more privacy.
Yes. And also, the mother would not be rushing the baby with the feed because she will be comfortable. And we want mothers to be comfortable as they breastfeed.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And not having all eyes on you. And that sort of a thing, which can make you feel.
Stop the production of the
milk.
You know?
Right.
Yes. They're so conscious and not concentrating on breastfeeding the baby. You know, the mind is such a funny thing. That initiation of lactation could just
and slows the hormone releasing and all of that. So it's very pivotal for mothers to be comfortable as they breastfeed.
Now, how long do you breastfeed a child? Because I have seen some children, I must say, up to 3 years old and so on, and they're still breastfeeding. And then I was reading something the other day that really says that the longer that the child breastfeeds, it is actually better for that child.
Yes.
Is there truth to that?
Yes. Studies have shown that, as Nurse Duncan had said before, babies, the longer the babies breastfeed, we tend to see them have a higher IQ. So the brain develop much better. They're more active, they're very alert. If you look at a baby, fully breastfeeding baby, they're actually more active than a formula fed baby. They do a lot more things, right? So when it comes to the age of breastfeeding, we encourage our mothers to allow the baby to breastfeed until they stop.
Okay.
They are usually the ones who stop themselves. So we have a lot of 3-year-olds, sometimes 4-year-olds, sometimes going on 5
who are still breastfeeding.
And they're still breastfeeding. And we encourage the mothers to they will stop. They will stop.
Okay. So you at least people can breastfeed up to 5 years old.
Yes.
Once the child wants it.
Once the child wants it. Once the child wants it. But in 5 years time, in terms of the quality of the milk, will it be the same in terms of it won't be the same? Because 5 years would have passed.
Yes.
So the milk will not be as rich.
No.
But what
most
children who continue to feed beyond that age, most of the time is just for comfort.
Right.
They're accustomed to this comfort. So
they're accustomed to the nipple in their mouth.
Yes. Most of the time it's a comfort. It's not necessarily that I'm hungry and I need something to eat. It's more of a comfort need.
It's more of a comfort need.
Yes.
To drop sleep maybe too.
To drop sleep. It's comfort. And so therefore sometimes I realize, you would buy a comforter for the child. So that when the child wants that comfort to replace
the breast.
Yes.
The breast, and it's really a nipple.
Yes.
And he puts that in his mouth and it feels a sense of, I suppose, pleasure, comfort, satisfaction, if you really want to say that. You wouldn't disagree with me? You seem to have some...
The child knows nothing is coming to this thing,
The child knows?
That is not getting anything to this dummy thing.
It's not getting the milk, but at the same time it might be getting some comfort.
But it doesn't last long.
So spit it out.
So spit it out.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Trying to trick it.
The child knows that it's not real.
Yes.
Exactly.
and it's not the same.
And it is not, and it's not the same thing. But to go back to the psychosexual stages of Sigmund Freud, that oral stage, a child has to successfully complete that oral stage before they can move on to another stage of development. And that is why it is so important, I suppose, for the breastfeeding, that the mouth becomes very important, the oral, there's a fixation at that point on the oral. And I used to wonder why children oftentimes, everything that they take up, if you notice, they put it in their mouth.
That's how they learn the environment.
That's how they learn the environment. You see? And that's how they get this sense of comfort. It's comfort and security comes through the mouth. But then they move on to other stages. You know, and they speak about the anal stage. Of course, where the child now would have to learn to use the potty and all of that sort of a thing. You know? So they're all stages, but that oral stage and that first stage, psychosocial, Erik Erikson, with the trust and the mistrust, are so important. So you are right. If that is not taken seriously, then you have children with problems.
Yes. Because imagine I'm hungry and I need food, and here are you giving me a dummy. And I need food. And I'm supposed to trust you. You are supposed to fulfill my needs. And you're not fulfilling my needs. You're giving me a dummy. So right there and then you are developing mistrust. And this mistrust is with somebody who you are supposed to trust.
Right. Good. Now, what plans do you have to improve on breastfeeding in St. Kitts and Nevis?
Okay.
Nurse
Keynes. Right. For us in our federation, we have started in last year with training. We started training our nurses. So we have established a committee, a breastfeeding committee, along with a group of trainers who will train nurses in the whole breastfeeding initiative, the baby friendly hospital initiative. So we have started that process. Also, there are things that we have started on the maternity unit that will help to sustain this breastfeeding for the 6 months, such as if moms who are listening, if they have delivered recently, they'll know we have started the process. We have that bonding with that baby shortly after birth, within the first hour. We encourage the moms to have the baby on their skin to skin contact with that mom, so it initiates that bonding process outside of the uterus for the mom and the baby. Then we'll start with initiating the breastfeeding, early initiation of breastfeeding. It's not normally a feed, but it's just the baby getting familiar with the breast. So we start that process already on the maternity unit, and it has been successful. So we have seen an increase in the moms who, after delivery, their willingness to breastfeed that infant because they've had that bond with that baby within the first hour. Also, we've produced our own documentary, which gives the public an idea of the steps that we have taken in order to make us accredited to be named as a baby-friendly hospital, which is coming, which will be accredited soon once we continue on the process. So we have started with the training. We've made some changes in the practices that we have done on the maternity unit in order to enhance breastfeeding practices. And also we have given the public, we allow the public to see what we are doing through the documentary and also the animation videos that we are showing. And we are encouraging moms to let the breast milk be the first feed that infant gets for the first 6 months of its life. It's very important for the infant and for the mothers also.
Okay, now is there any case where you would discourage breastfeeding with respect to a mom. Is there any case at all where you will discourage breastfeeding?
Yes.
Yes.
There are instances where the mom might be HIV positive.
Yes.
So if mom is HIV positive, we usually discourage them from breastfeeding. Now, a lot of persons don't know that although you are HIV positive, you can breastfeed. However, in our federation, we don't encourage breastfeeding. Why? The World Health Organization stipulates that a HIV positive mother, she can breastfeed if you don't have the necessary substitutes to provide feeding. Like for instance, in certain countries, you might not have clean running water. Some persons are in poverty, so they cannot afford the formulas and so forth. So those are the ones who you would encourage to breastfeed, because it's safer for the baby to breastfeed than to get dirty running water and so forth. But in our federation, we have substitutes readily available that we can use. And one of the things that some persons ask when we are doing training is, what if the mother is unemployed and she can't afford to buy formulas? Well, we are proud to say that in our federation, that still is not a problem, because social services are the ones who assist the moms with getting these breast milk substitutes. So once they are HIV positive, we properly educate them so that they can make an informed choice, so they will not breastfeed. They will opt not to breastfeed. Also, we have another virus, the HTLV virus, where we do not encourage them to breastfeed also. It's transmitted in the same way that HIV is transmitted, and it attacks the same cells that the HIV virus attacks. So therefore, if you have HIV, you cannot breastfeed. If you have this, well, we don't encourage breastfeeding. It's the same thing with this virus. If they have it, they we do not encourage breastfeeding. So for these two cases, specifically on our islands, we do not encourage breastfeeding. We advocate for them to use a safer form of feeding, which is the substitute feeding. And we properly educate them, as I said before, and we teach them how to prepare it, how to store it, and all of that. So those are the only reasons for now why we would advocate for mom not to breastfeed.
Okay. Now, you spoke about the bonding that takes place because of breastfeeding. Now, that bonding doesn't start with breastfeeding. It starts in the womb of the mother.
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit to that? Because sometimes I don't think people understand the bonding that takes place between a child in the womb. They think that the bonding begins to take place outside of the womb.
Well, when a woman is pregnant, the bonding begins as the baby starts to hear your voice. We encourage our mothers after pregnant. You could sing to the baby, you could read a book to the baby, you could stroke your tongue, give your tummy a few strokes, and so forth. All of that helps the baby to know it's mommy. Because as soon as a baby is born, it actually knows its mom. Just by the sound of her voice, her smell, her touch, every little detail, they already know their mom. So although breastfeeding helps with bonding, all of that starts already from the womb, the moment you conceive.
So there's already that intimate connection.
Yes.
Between the mother
And child.
and the child. Now, what about the father?
Also, with the father, it happens as well, because especially if the father is around, because the baby usually knows its daddy's smell, usually knows its daddy's voice. We have seen instances ourselves where we might have a fussy baby, and as soon as daddy reach and daddy only says something, the baby quiets one time.
He takes the baby.
That is the voice they are familiar with. So we encourage our fathers to please play a pivotal role in the development of this baby. Stick around the mommy, let the baby get accustomed to hearing your voice, knowing your smell and everything.
You know, we have in our federation, and it is very sad, really, because as soon as the girl gets pregnant, the man takes off. Quite a number of them. As soon as she gets pregnant, he's gone. Which tells you that they don't really care about you. They now see, the only thing they now see is that, look, my goodness, I'm going to have some sort of responsibility.
Yes.
You know? I have a child now to look after. So they take off. All of a sudden, you're getting along good. And as soon as you say, oh, I'm pregnant, they take off. What does that do to the child? You've abandoned the child already. Abandoned the child in the womb. And if you could have killed it, you will have killed it. You know? So the role of the father in terms of the support of the father in terms of the child in the womb, I want you to tell the listening public what the support, the role of the father is with the child in the womb.
Well, it is very important for the father to be apart while the woman is pregnant. I sometimes say that although you might not be in a relationship, still try to keep in contact with the mothers. We have had instances where the mothers might say, oh, me want the father here. Me here ain't nothing. Sometimes I tend to comfort them and tell them, yes, I understand that if you and the father is not in a relationship, you might be feeling angry with the dad right now, but you still have to remember that this is the father, and this child have a right to know its father, and you have a right to form a bond and a relationship with his father. Whatever you and the father had, this is not about that right now. This is not just you now. This is you and baby. And if you can separate yourself from the dad, but the child should not have to separate itself from the dad because you have separated yourself. So you still need the father. And this bond that baby is going to have with the father going to be a sense of strength. Because we need that in our community. And we see a lot of that is lacking. And you tend to see that children who have fathers playing a part in their lives in our communities, they tend to turn out much better than a child who has no father playing a role. So we need that strength. We need them to help our children to be stronger, more sound-minded, to know what love is about. Because there's something about a mother and a child love, but there's even something even more amazing when you have your father's love. Regardless if you're a boy or if you're a girl, there's something about the strength that's give you. So we want that.
So the bonding doesn't just come through breastfeeding.
No.
The fathers must be there to hold the child.
Right.
And
They
there
allow
are
to hold the
instances
babies.
where we even allows the father to do skin to skin.
Skin.
Because sometimes we know mothers get cesarean sections, or sometimes they may develop complications during delivery and they're not in a condition to do the skin to skin, and the fathers
That steps
steps in and they are the ones who do the skin to skin. So they are the one who form the first
Bond
Bond.
with that baby.
exterior bonding with the baby. So we advocate for that as well.
You know, one of the reasons I'm asking you these questions, because even though we are here talking about breastfeeding, you will have some men who will say that don't have anything to do with me. Because one, I don't have any breasts to start with. And I cannot give any baby any suck. And so therefore, you know, that is your thing and this is my thing.
We've had instances
Mr.
where we've seen
Williams
that.
really
You know,
and truly-
and that is the point I'm actually trying to get at.
We are even surprised now that most of these dads today, they are
They
so
want to be
involved.
Yes.
They want
And
to
that
be
is a
And
good
part.
sometimes
thing.
I have to call them and say, listen, I need to speak to you. And I would tell the mom, stay there, I need to speak to the dad. And I said to him, she's not breastfeeding as she should. She need to breastfeed for longer periods. The baby, she's saying she's sleepy, she's tired, but really and truly she's not satisfying the baby. And so he would try and encourage her to.
We have a lot of that, and I must commend that. Yes,
Yeah.
Because we have seen instances now where even though the father is not involved in the mother, he comes.
They come.
Yes.
And they want to be in the delivery room, and we allow them to be in the delivery room
Because they want a healthy child too. So the importance of the community. I don't know if you can touch on that, Nurse Keynes. The importance of the community in understanding the role of breastfeeding, because sometimes through ignorance, and if people don't know, then you can't support something you really don't know.
You don't have the knowledge,
Right.
Okay. For our community, when it comes to breastfeeding, as we say, it takes a community to raise a child. And even from pregnancy, we have to encourage our mothers. We're talking about breastfeeding, but it goes back to when you get pregnant, as you said, the antenatal visits. Those are important. Going to the health centers, right? Getting your checkups, going to the doctors, making sure that you are registered for your delivery. And we are encouraging moms to register for delivery, or as we say it in our term, is booking at 28 weeks. You don't need a doctor paper to come for booking. You just need to show up at the hospital, at the outpatient department, and get registered for delivery at 28 weeks. Once you have been booked, you have your lab investigations done, then it gives you a chance to have that educational session with the nurses. At the health centers, we advocate for pregnant women to visit the health centers, because they give you that one-on-one educational session where they teach you about breastfeeding. So they'll do the group sessions, and they have that one-on-one preparing you for breastfeeding when that baby is born. At the registration for delivery, we have that session also that helps you to be prepared for when your baby is born for breastfeeding. And when you come to the maternity unit now to deliver, we also have that teaching, because we'll examine the breast to see how prepared are you. Do you have the colostrum? So we know ahead of time that, okay, this mom is going to need a little more assistance, right? So the community, once they know these things, it helps the mom who is pregnant, and they can be the advocate, our voices in the community, to tell them, well, have you gone for your visit? Have you done already booked up for delivery? How is it are you planning to do with breastfeeding? Make that decision from the antenatal period when you're pregnant, right? In terms of benefits for the community, we have a healthier society in terms of less non-communicable diseases, high blood pressure, sugar, diabetes, obesity, cancers, right? The cost of breastfeeding is nothing. It doesn't cost you to buy the breasts. God made you with them. They're full on their own. When the baby feeds, they're full for the next feed again. So everything is there prepared. The milk is warm, so you don't have to heat it up. In terms of persons who have to go back to work, we encourage in the workplaces to allow the moms to have that opportunity, if not to breastfeed, but to express their milk and store it, so they can continue breastfeeding or providing the breast milk support when they are away from their infant. So these are the information we share with the general public, and helps to build a stronger community and support for breastfeeding. Also, we are advocating for persons who have breastfed successfully for the first 6 months of the baby's life to be part of a committee, to join us and help us to support other women who is willing to try for the first 6 months.
And maybe having some sort of challenge. When you breastfeed for 6 months, you will know what it was like for you. So you could advise somebody who is probably having some difficulty. So you can tell them, it's possible, I did it, and, motivate them. Because sometimes it could be a bit discouraging, especially if you don't find breastfeeding easy. It's not every mother find breastfeeding easy. Some mothers have challenges. So there are times when they may need a bit of motivation and support. So we, in the process of forming a committee for that, where you could get this breastfeeding support that you need. And it's not gonna just be health workers and
Persons in the
doctors and
community.
nurses. We looking for persons from the community who want to support breastfeeding, who have done breastfeeding for 6 months successfully without any other introducing any other foods before the 6 months.
What about women who suffer with postpartum depression? Because you have that sometimes after the baby is born, the child goes through a period. I mean, the mother goes through a period of depression. What advice do you give?
For that, the support of the dad, the support of other family members, for the night period. You know, mom, babies might be up during the night, and mom can't get to rest during the night. So someone there to support her in order to help her to feed that infant during the night can help her to get the rest that she needs. All right. So you have the support of the father, support of a grandmother, some
close
other
relative.
family member that can help her,
Or even a
in.
friend.
and have her
close
to
friend.
someone she can talk to
Somebody
to
she
let them
trusts.
know. That's why the committee, the breastfeeding support committee, is important. That support group. So she has someone that she can call and relay her concerns to. That is very important.
Right.
And also to add to that, when we're doing discharge teaching at the hospital, because usually before the mother is discharged, we do another set of teaching. So it's lots of teaching. And we advise them on postpartum blues, postpartum depression, how to identify if they're having these blues. And we also tell them that sometimes you may not be the one who recognize these first signs. So if you have your significant other is there, he might tell you he realized this, he realized that. These are signs to tell you that I need to speak to someone. And also we include the fathers as part of this discharge teaching so that they too can recognize these signs, because they might just see it as, oh, she just get a baby, she moody and she tired and she ain't really eating now because she ain't have no appetite and so forth. So but if they are part of it and they have the information and the knowledge and they're able to identify these first signs, they could be the one who report it as well. So we include them in part of the teaching, as part of the teaching.
Right.
Yeah.
Now the health of the mother becomes extremely important.
Yes.
Is there any way that you can test, or do you test breast milk to see the quality of it? You don't.
But persons might ask, nurse, what can she eat when she gets home? And so we say, you eat a balanced meal, you eat what you're accustomed of eating. Or would this gripe the baby's belly? Would it give it diarrhea? We just say eat a normal meal. Okay. A normal meal would suffice.
We don't advocate any special diets.
No special diet.
And we also clear up the myths that they may have, because there are patients who might tell you, oh, my mother tell me don't eat grapes because when I eat grapes I'm going to gripe up the baby. And you know, this is somebody who you have to advise and educate, because we hear a lot of these things.
And they do bring gripe water too.
Yes, we do hear a lot of things. So we usually have to advise them and educate them. And when we realize that is the mom is telling her these things, we even
Talk to the mom.
Calling the mother.
educate the mom. And we tell the mom, well, you know, grandparents and our great grandparents, they had an idea, they had their ideas, but science shows, and we educate them and we tell them these things, because we do have that. And we also have mothers who might say, oh, me breast milk runny,
I eat a
10 in doing the baby anything. So we educate them as to the different
Because
types
that's
of
the
milk,
reason.
breast milk that you might see, and how do you know that
Stages of
it's satisfying the baby, how you know that the baby is getting enough, all these things. So these are things that we do.
Okay. Now, would you encourage babies sharing breasts? For example, one baby, you're the mother of a baby, and she has a child, would you encourage your child sharing the breast of Mary, Nurse Mary?
In our
We
federation,
don't
no.
I've never seen it either.
It happens in
Other
other
countries,
countries.
because obviously there are
It
wet
happens in
nurses
other
and
countries.
stuff
We
like that,
yes,
but
as she says, there are
wet
wet
nurses.
nurses.
Yeah, we don't
There are
want-
persons who come in just to breastfeed.
Just to
that,
breastfeed.
just
Yes.
to supply milk.
But we don't
We-
do that here in our federation.
Why do you think that that is allowed?
There
For
are
others to come in, to breastfeed. So you have people who are just, their job is to breastfeed,
supply breast milk.
to
Supply.
supply breast milk.
because there are mothers who
For one reason
Cannot
or another, cannot
breastfeed.
Just like we just outlined.
The HIV mom who is HIV positive,
Some who just
a mom
don't.
who might have cancer, she won't
Right.
be breast cancer, she won't be able to breastfeed. But the supply of breast milk is there, someone else can supply it for her, and she can give her infant because of all the nutrients that it contains.
so they allow it.
So they allow it.
Yes.
I understand,
And these-
because breastfeeding then is so important, is so crucial, that you cannot afford to have the baby not
Not getting
breastfeeding.
breast milk.
Yes.
Yes.
And instead of, for example, because they could use substitutes, we spoke about the substitutes,
But they're not the same.
but they're not the same thing, and so therefore you have people who are there just to provide that breast milk.
Yes.
You think our federation needs something like that?
No.
We don't need it. Why?
Well,
We have HIV mothers.
Yes.
We
but
have
not-
moms with cancer.
We have moms with
yeah.
cancer, breast
But
cancer.
it's a few and far and in between.
I see.
It's a 1 year. and
There's
a
no
1
need
there.
for it.
No. 1 year, 1 there. Cannot, I mean,
Maybe in
give
the
it a
future.
reason.
Right.
It will be a major need.
And I guess
but
it comes
for
the
now,
development of places as well too. But
Okay. But for now,
For now we are
the
good.
substitutes, you would go with the substitutes.
for those
now,
who
yeah.
can.
Yeah, for now. For those who
Yes.
cannot, you would go
Yes.
with the substitutes.
because it's very limited.
Very one
It's-
now
Mhm.
one now maybe months down the road
I
and next year.
I see what you mean.
So it's
Yeah.
really
I raised that question without even realizing that, because it just dawned on me that actually that is something that takes place in other countries.
Yes,
Yes,
it takes
yes.
place in other
Africa.
countries.
yes.
Mhm.
African countries.
And there is, just like how we have a blood bank.
Maybe.
they have
Right,
There's
and a
a milk
sperm
bank.
bank. And a sperm bank.
Yes,
a
we
breast
have.
milk bank.
People who
Yes.
just donate their sperms
Yes.
So sell their breast milk.
for those who, for some who are impotent and who want a child.
Money making for the man.
And it's a money maker for the man. I mean, he's paid to donate it.
That's right.
Put it to good use, I suppose. Now, there are 10 steps to successful breastfeeding.
Yes.
What are those 10 steps? For the mothers out there who are listening, or the potential mothers
fathers too.
and the fathers.
Don't forget that.
Okay. For the 10 steps to successful breastfeeding, we try to meet these 10 steps. In meeting these 10 steps and achieving these steps, you can become certified as a baby-friendly hospital. So these are the 10 steps that we are in the process of achieving right now in order to be certified as a baby-friendly hospital. Okay, so we have 10 steps and they are broken down as critical management procedures and key clinical practices. So the first step is under what we call clinical management procedures, and the first step comprises of 3 parts. We have A, comply fully with the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes and relevant World Health Assembly resolutions. Nurse Keynes will speak more about the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes. We know this may be the first time some persons are hearing about it, but you have to put a code in place in order to protect something that is very important to human sustenance. We also have a written infant breastfeeding policy that is routinely communicated to staff and parents. That is part B of number 1. And part C is establish ongoing monitoring and data management systems. So as I said before, we are in the process of meeting these steps in order to become accredited as certified as a baby-friendly hospital. So far we have already drafted our breastfeeding policy, and this policy will promote breastfeeding. So you don't have any, it does not support the promotion of infant formulas and so forth, any bottles, any teats. It also protects those mothers that I mentioned before who cannot breastfeed, and let's not forget those who might blatantly come and tell you they're not breastfeeding. And although you educate, they might stand firm and still says that they're not breastfeeding. So you still have to have something in place for these persons because it's their right. So this is something that we're hoping to achieve at least by maybe November of this year.
Yes.
And this policy will be distributed to community nurses, all the units at the Jen France General Hospital. It also is being done at the Alexandra Hospital in Nevis. So they too will be on board, and they will distribute this policy as well to the different units. And step 2 is to ensure that staff has sufficient knowledge, competence and skills to support breastfeeding. And as Nurse Kane said before, we already started meeting this. We already started training staff. And when we say staff, we mean everybody. The gardeners, the maintenance, the lab technicians, the X-ray technicians, the nurses, the doctors, everybody. So we have already started that process. And we also have our assessment tool. So we assess to see if these workers have sufficient knowledge that we expect them to know about breastfeeding. So we do our teaching and we do assessment as well as to staff knowledge. Step 3, which is the first step on the key clinical practices, the other steps are under this one. It says discuss the importance and management of breastfeeding with pregnant women and their families. And this is something that we do all the time. We do it at community level, we do it at the doctor's office, we do it at the hospital. So all mothers are educated on the importance of breastfeeding for their babies and also themselves, because we let them know what the benefits to them is as well. They are also prepared of how to feed, because with some mothers it comes naturally. With other mothers you have to teach them how it's done. And this is done, as I said before, in community and institution, hospital and private sector. With the teaching them how to breastfeed, we teach them how to care for the breast, how to prepare the breast, how to store the milk and all of that. Step 4 is facilitate immediate and uninterrupted skin-to-skin contact and support mothers to initiate breastfeeding as soon as possible after birth. And Nurse Keynes had mentioned this already. So this is actually a step that we have fulfilled.
Yes.
And we have already initiated the skin-to-skin. Our goal is to have at least 90% of our cases. In order to be certified, you have to have 90% of your cases being breastfed and having skin-to-skin. And we are almost there. We are almost there. So majority of our babies, as soon as they are born, within 30 minutes after birth, they are placed on the mother's skin. And when we say skin to skin, we mean no clothes on the mommy, no clothes on the baby. So we put the baby between the mother's breasts and we cover the baby with a cloth. The baby is usually the one who initiate the breastfeeding, because they are the one who tell you when they are hungry. And when they are hungry, they actually crawls to the breast. It's something very amazing to see. They actually crawl to the breast and latch on themselves to the breast and start to suckle. Without you doing anything. So this is something that is happening right now at the Joseph M. France General Hospital and at the Alexandra Hospital. Step 5 says to support mothers to initiate and maintain breastfeeding and manage common difficulties. So we teach the mothers the different positions because there are different positions for breastfeeding. So we teach them the different position. We teach them how to properly attach the baby to the breast and how would they know that the baby is properly attached to the breast for breastfeeding. And we also assist them with common breastfeeding problems. Like for instance, even though we might teach them how to latch on the baby, they might not get it done properly, so we assist them with getting it done. We might teach them different positions, but they're not getting the positions properly, so we have to assist them as to how to position the baby properly and so forth. So this is something that we do 24/7 on the maternity and nursery unit. Step 6 says do not provide breastfed newborns any food or fluids other than breast milk unless medically indicated. And we are proud to say that now at our institution, all of our babies are breastfed on demand. We only provide substitute feeds if it is prescribed by a doctor. And we treat it the same as medication. And although it is prescribed by a doctor, we still get the parents' consent before we give it. Because there are some parents who does not support substitute feeding. They might tell you they don't want the baby to get any formula whatsoever. Regardless of what is the reason, they don't want the baby to get it. So before we give it, all the doctor might say give the baby some formula or give the baby some dextrose or whatever the doctor may order. We go to the parent and we tell the parent exactly what doctor says, why he want the baby to have it, and then we get their consent to give it.
Yeah, okay. We have to go to the phone lines and take some calls, because I'm sure there are people who want to call in. The numbers to call are, the international number is 1718-577-2916. That's the international number, 1718-577-2916. And the overseas number is 465. And the local number is 465-2555. We await your calls. Working for you, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
It's coincidentally, I listened to a program on the BBC about 2 weeks ago, and they were talking about breastfeeding, and they concentrated on Kenya, Africa, and they spoke about a milk bank, because some of the people do not have electricity and proper facilities, so they extract the milk from them and store it and label it. So when they want milk, they could go there and get it for the babies. You are considering anything like that? That's one. Don't answer me yet. You mentioned a number of things here. When a child is in the mother and the father goes nearby and sometimes he touches the belly, the child starts jumping, you know. I experienced that. I personally experienced that. And I noticed you all didn't say something that I don't know if it still happens, but there are some females that the nipple of the breast does not protrude so that the child could get to suck. What happens in a case like that? And I know they used to have a certain formula manufactured to suit children like that who can't get to suck. It's a very light formula, but you got to spend money because the child can consume a bit of it in a quick time. So you have to spend money when it's like that. So I just start touch on those things and to listen to your responses. Money when it's like that. All right. So I just
thank you very much for your call. Working for you, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. We want to congratulate you on your program, first of all. So good afternoon to your panelists there. And I'm happy to see how much information they are putting out today. It's more than a handful, more than a mouthful. One question I want to ask: is there any restriction area where breastfeeding should not be allowed, like in a lab, or sometimes the air might be very dirty, smoky. What restriction, if there is any, where breastfeeding should not take place? That's one question. The other thing I want to touch base on, and I'm happy you're speaking about breastfeeding. I happen to be there at the JNF, and I experienced a situation where a mother was there, and she had real difficulty in breastfeeding. Now, I must give, kudos to the nurse on hand. She wear red belt. I think it might be Miss Walters, who actually came, and she decided that she's not going to leave that patient until she sees that she can actually breastfeed the baby. And I hear you speaking about training of the nurses and whatnot. But it's okay to train, but you must enforce your nurses that they must continue. They must continue, right, to do what they have learned. Because, like I say, the patient was there for a very long time in some serious pain because her breast was very hard, right? And the nurse in hand, she took her into the nursery where she gave her experience in using a hot towel, massage the breast, and she get a breast pump so she can pump the milk out, which will reduce that hardness in the breast, and the baby was able to suck. And there were other staff on duty who did not do that, right? So like I say, yes, you are teaching them, they are not about it, but how are they going out and doing what they are supposed to do? And that is important, because you can't say that, hey, you are a parent, you are a mother, and you're supposed to know how to breastfeed. Sometimes because of the pain that you're into, sometimes the father is not there, sometimes it's in different pain because you might have get cut or whatever, and you're not functioning properly. So the nurse now job now is to help to comfort you and make sure that the baby is getting that breastfeed that you keep saying over and over that it must have. And yes, you're right. A lot of fathers are now stepping up to the plate as we speak and being there for the children. And I always tell guys, once you can sleep with a woman, be there for your child. It doesn't matter what kind of person she is or you think she is. You sleep with her. As I say, you make up your bed, you lie down in it. Right? But I just wanted to emphasize more, right? And the breast also. Les Wise spoke about the long distance in breastfeeding. Is there any danger in breastfeeding up to 5 months? Like, is the milk really good enough at that stage? I know you said the longer the baby sucks, it's better for him or her, or let's say the baby. But is there any danger during such a long period? Thank you very much for your time, and continue having a wonderful day. And I want to big up all the mother and this week, Breastfeeding Week.
Okay, thank you for your contribution. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon, sir.
And good afternoon to the wonderful nurses them there.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, I am a victim of not getting breastfeed. I'm a 7-month child. And my mother told me when she born me, I was in the incubator. I spent almost a whole year in the hospital. So, but I always say breastfeed is important. Because when you breastfeed a child, when the child sucks his mother breast, that helps his muscles and it bones them to be stronger when he's growing up in age. And to be truthful, my mother told me that my next sister, the sister before me, she said that she bring us up on goat milk. She had a goat and she used to milk the goat and she used to give that to drink. So I want to know how that was, the goat milk was in that time to give us. Because to be truthful, I'm not a sick child. I got to be true, I got a lot of joint problem and so my joint and my hand them give me a lot of problem now. I used to play football and all those things. But I realize now growing, coming older than older, I'm getting a lot of foot problem and so arthritis and things in my joints and so. And but I always say that when a child breastfeed, he well fed. You understand? So I encourage all mother out there, as long as the healthy and the good, to breastfeed the child because it's important. And wonderful program. I will listen to the rest of the year.
Thank you for your contribution.
Yes.
What is amazing is that we're talking about, or we're having a discussion on breastfeeding, but all of our callers thus far have been men.
Men.
Yes.
Have been men.
Amazing.
Really showing an interest in breastfeeding. And I think that is quite,
Commendable.
that is commendable.
Yes.
That is commendable.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to, they made some, you want to respond to anything that was said.
Okay, for the first caller, I want to thank you for your comments. And one question you asked is about the milk bank. At present, we cannot say we have any plans to go in that direction. Based on Kenya's population and other instances, economic situations and so in those countries, we at present do not face those kind of difficulties. So we have not, at least for now, looked into such venture. Alright? Our second caller spoke about inverted.
The same color.
The same call.
Okay.
Yes.
Spoke about inverted nipples and breastfeeding. What we encourage mothers who've had a case of inverted nipples, we still try to have that mom breastfeed, attempt at breastfeeding. And if it's unsuccessful, then we have to express that milk and we can feed that infant using a cup or a spoon. Not using a bottle or artificial teeth, but using a cup and a spoon in order to feed that infant. And that is what we use in the nursery. We are giving our newborns the express milk, and they do feed very well from a cup or even a spoon.
To the persons who asked about restrictions about where your breastfeeding is not allowed, the only restriction that we have is that you don't breastfeed around smoky environments. You try as much as possible to refrain from taking a baby to an area where there is smoking. So that's the only restriction. To the person who asks if there's any danger if you breastfeed longer than 5 months, 5 years, there are no danger in breastfeeding. As we said earlier, we encourage mothers to breastfeed up until the child stops him or herself. There are no dangers. There is changes in the milk, but there are no dangers. Most of the time when a child breastfeed for longer than 2 years, it's usually because of due to comfort. Not that I'm hungry and I need to feed, but because I am comfort and this is where I find my comfort.
And to the caller who called about the engorged breast, that happens sometimes when there is a delay in milk and production, and then bam, we have this flow of milk, and so the breast becomes too full, and so it starts to just maybe drip out, and so you have a backup of within the ducts. So as you said, as you rightly said, the patient was taken into the nursery, given some warm compresses, and we started to manually express with a pump, express the milk from that mom, and that normally relieves the pain and discomfort of it as well. And as
just mentioned something there. Also, to interject there, sometimes moms ends up with engorgement because they have problems with properly breastfeeding. Maybe the baby was not properly attached to the breast, and if the baby is not properly attached to the breast, then the breast would not be fully emptied. So you have milk being stored on milk. So what should have been done is to find out how the mom is doing with the attaching of the baby to the breast, because that will be the first thing that will need to be corrected. Because even though you may assist her with emptying the breast and getting some comfort, if she goes back and still continues to feed the way she feeding, if she doesn't know how to properly attach the baby to the breast, if she goes on and continues to do that, it will be a recurrence. So the first thing you do is observe her. You find out if she's attaching the baby properly to the breast. If you recognize that that is the problem, you address that problem, and you also help her to empty the breast. And yes, we will continue to do the training on the breastfeeding. We'll continue to speak to nurses about assisting mothers and so forth, because this is something we really encouraging. And it's not all the time when you recognize these signs you jump in right away. Sometimes you need to observe, because breastfeeding is something that you observe the mother doing. You don't just jump in right away and start to assist. You start to position the baby, you start to express the breast and all of that. You observe her, you see how she's handling it. And then if she is really not coping with it, or she's not finding a solution, that is when you interject and you assist.
Now, I had a question in terms of course, the United Nations has what you call some sustainable development goals, what they call SDGs, that are to be attained by the year 2030. Now, how does the whole issue of breastfeeding of babies fit into those goals? One of them, of course, is health and well-being, which is goal number 3. How do you see that fitting in by 2030 target date?
All right. In terms of the SDGs, number 3, with our initiative in improving our breastfeeding status currently in our country, that gives us the next 10 years. So we'll have a mark to see how our infants, our children, how they'll perform in school. Those children born within now, we'll see in the next 10 years, how are they in school? How are they when it comes to non-communicable diseases, obesity? So we'll have that marker, so we can see, have we met that goal, especially in the age bracket for childhood, between the age 0 to 10 years. So that will help us. So this initiative is going to take us there.
Help you towards the achievement
of that.
Yes.
of that goal. Right. Now, you started by mentioning the activities that you have for the week. I would like you to outline those activities again for those who are listening, so that,
Okay, so we'll be celebrating Breastfeeding Week from August 18th, to the 24th. And it will begin on a Sunday. The Sunday we'll have the Minister of Health doing the opening. And then during that week we'll be having training of staff, both hospital staff and community staff. And this will be done in St. Kitts and Nevis. We also will be airing our breastfeeding animation for that entire week. Every day, everywhere you go, you'll be seeing breastfeeding, and it will be aired in eateries of St. Kitts and Nevis, and also at the ferry terminals in St. Kitts and Nevis, and at the Pelican Mall in St. Kitts. We also did a breastfeeding documentary. This documentary speaks about the Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative. It has in the information that tells you what the Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative is about, and what we're hoping to achieve, what we have achieved thus far, and so forth. So you will be more informed as to what it is and what we are doing, and that will be displayed during the entire week as well in different areas. We will be airing it at the different health centers and all other health facilities around the island, and also at workplaces.
Okay.
So those are just a few of the areas a few of the plans that we have so far. And our theme for this breastfeeding week, this year's breastfeeding week, is protect breastfeeding in the workplace.
Right, that is a local theme. Is that the
This is the PAHO theme.
that's the PAHO?
The Baby Friendly Hospital
Right.
Initiative is sponsored by PAHO
Right, Pan American Health Organization.
Yes.
I noticed that you're wearing some logo, some shirts there. Pan American Health Organization, the World Health Organization, and the Ministry of Health. So you're partnering with these multilateral organizations to within the Americas.
Yes.
Really within the Americas. And so on. Good caller. Working for you, good afternoon.
That's why. How are you?
I am well, sir.
And the beautiful nurses, them who there with you today, are working for you.
Yes.
It's working for all of us. That's why.
Yes, sir.
I heard you while I was in the chow shop. And you was making the point to the nurses them that some of the dads them, when they get these young girls pregnated, and they recognize that they're pregnated, they run off, leave them, and leave them there to just go through that day alone. I want the nurses them to elaborate on that, because that is a big thing around here. Because a lot of these young girls getting pregnant. Some of the men them a little older than them, some younger, and they does not dare for them to choke the pregnancy with the concern. And I'm asking the ministry to look at it and let it put things in place at least to work with these young mothers, because it's a concern. When you look around in every constituency around St. Kitts right now, we're facing that problem. And next thing I heard you talk about, that's why, and you drive to them their attention, is that the fathers, they must be for the children when the children are born. Make sure that the mothers, them that what they want to get these children. They could be the next Prime Minister, and the next Attorney General, and the next Governor General. We have to look after these young kids. Anyway, have a good day, and nurses keep working, because we shedding light on you all. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm not a usual person to call too often, but it's a very good topic, and I have to call back. What I don't know if it might be the right time, but I think that the hospital and the maternity is doing a good job in visiting time and the length of time that fathers are given to be there for the mothers. So it is very important that maybe the nurse can elaborate, maybe in wrapping up, about the visiting time and the amount of time or the special time that fathers are given to be there for these mothers. I'm speaking about the fathers who actually want to be there. They are fathers who want to stay at the hospital much longer, so the mother can get a sleep and he also can bond with the child. So it is very important during that first stage or the first week of breastfeeding in the hospital.
Thank you for your call. Okay, that caller raised a very important point. And while he's speaking about the visiting hours that is given to the fathers, I think the nurses should understand a little bit and give a little bit of leeway at the hospital when you have a father. Mm-hmm. You don't chase him out and say, well, visiting time up now. But the paternity leave Mothers get maternity leave, you know, to take care of the child. And I think in the law, there is something for paternity leave as well. It's not as long as the maternity leave.
1 week.
It is 1 week. Now, what do you think of that? The mother is getting 3 months, 90 days, and the father is being given 1 week. You think that is fair? It is not
I
fair.
think it can be longer.
1 week alone. Something needs to be done about that, I think, because to me it shows the inequality, and it is not putting the
Importance
on the father's role, even within breastfeeding.
Yep.
And the support for the mother.
Mother.
You know, but then I suppose you're going to make all kinds of other arguments about, oh, are they married? And are they this and are they that? And all kinds of different things. You know, those things are going to come into play.
But very rare persons, you see, I've seen 1 or 2 persons ask for that, for the paternity leave. As a
Very rarely,
Very,
the men.
yes.
I don't.
And then what does that tell you though? If they don't ask for it?
If they are aware that they can have it,
Or if they're aware?
yes, that they can have it.
Uh-huh.
So if they are not aware, they may not take it.
Uh-huh. And it goes back to my early point that sometimes, you know, that support of the father in the early stages, you know, the mother has had the child, and you know, you have these early stages that the mother is looking for that support. And sometimes that support is not there because sometimes of a culture that we have that states that the father does not have to play an active role in those early stages of the child. And that is the point I was driving home. That's the point I was driving home in the very beginning. That support, because you mentioned, of course, the mother needs support in terms of the breastfeeding. And you know, you've just had a child, and so you're going through all kinds of things too. The psychological and the emotional stuff, and the physical changes, and all the tiredness, and all of that sort of a thing. You have more responsibilities now, and those that initial stage, you need help and you need support.
And not only that, some persons does not know that the father himself will be going through changes.
He's going to change his
just
too.
how mothers end up with postpartum blues, daddies too end up with blues.
Right.
So this is something that you also need to take into consideration.
He realizes now that he has a child, so sometimes it's either right, and sometimes it's either that or the pendulum swings. Is it that they're going to be very responsible, or is it they're going to flee?
A lot of changes to his life and his
A
lifestyle.
lot of changes to his life and his lifestyle. He now has to the whole aspect of spending time with the child. You might not be breastfeeding the child. So when you're breastfeeding the child, you can't breastfeed the child because you don't have mammary glands that produce milk, leche. But at the very same time, your role in being there.
Yes. And to the person calling about the visiting hours, he seems to be well informed, because our visiting hours to the dad is anywhere from 8 in the a.m. to 8 p.m. And as you so rightly say, sometimes even 9 o'clock they're still there trying to help settle down the baby because mom is taking a nap. And so we afford them that extra little time, you know. So the hours are very extensive.
Right.
Right, and they are allowed that.
Is there anything that the caller said that you wanted to respond to?
The
Not
one who
really.
spoke about the goat milk.
Yes.
So
Right.
he said that his mom gave them goat milk. Goat milk is considered a
Very
substitute.
Yes.
Oh.
So even though you can give goat milk because it's considered a substitute, we do not advocate that babies be fed substitute.
Right.
So we would not advocate for children to be fed
Human milk
human milk. Human milk alone.
and not goat milk.
No. Not goat milk, not cow milk, and
Not
whatever
powdered
other milk.
Not powdered milk. Human milk. Right. Okay, is there anything that you want to say before we go? Is there anything that you want to highlight before we leave?
There was a call about the young girls being impregnated and being left alone. And it depends on what age he's talking about. Because we have teenage pregnancies, teenagers who are 18 and under 20.
And sometimes these teenagers, because they're not mature, because they're not emotionally, psychologically, and financially ready to have a child, they are the ones that need most support.
Yes.
And as he said, most of them are left alone. Well, their parents have to step in.
The parents have to step in. And I can give you many examples of that.
And social services, if you will.
And we sometimes have to speak to these mothers of these new mothers. Because although, yes, we want them to offer their support, we don't want them to take the child as if it is theirs completely. We still need the mother, and we're seeing a lot of that, where we have 19-year-olds, sometimes up to 21, coming to have a baby, and the grandmothers want to do every single thing for that baby. And sometimes when you tell them, no, you have to allow the mother to do this, you have to allow the mother to do that, sometimes it causes frustration because it's my grandchild or that's my child. Them the kind of things you hear. So you have to advise them and tell them, yes, I understand it's your grandchild, I understand that you're excited, maybe it's your first grand, who knows, but you still have to allow the mother to do what she is expected to do. So yes, your job is to offer support, but not to take over.
Right. So you can't take the place of a mother.
Yes.
You can't take the place of the mother. You can't take the place of the father either.
No. And we have instances where grandparents and the father clashes. Like for instance, you might have a woman in labor. She's going to the delivery room. You ask her, who do you want in the delivery room with you? And she might say, she boyfriend. The mother now take off, which is maybe the grandmother now, take offense. You want him to come in and you want me to come? So sometimes you have to speak to the mother and you say, yes, but why would you want to rob him of his chance to be there to see the birth of his child? Oh, well, that's my child.
Yeah.
That is what she wants.
So these are things that we are faced with on a regular. And we want the grandparents to know, yes, we are happy that you are supporting your child and you're wanting to be there and you want it to be it's pivotal role. We still have to allow the fathers.
It's the culture. It's the culture that we have, and the culture that basically needs to change. We are out of time. And would you like to say something before we go?
Just wanted to touch on the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes, and this code helps to protect breast milk. Some consumers and retailers might get offended because it might put them at a disadvantage, right? One thing is that we are not supposed to be advertising of any products to the public as a hospital, right? No donations of breast milk substitutes and supplies to the maternity ward. No free supplies to mothers. So we are not supposed to be distributing anything. In the US, they'll give you a package for Similac or those other stuff. We can't do that in our institution. No promotion in the health services, so we can't have breast milk products being, breast milk substitute products being posted up and down the institution, even at the health centers. No company personnel to advise mothers, so no representative from any company that sells formulas can come and speak to the mothers. No gifts or personal supplies to healthcare workers. We can't receive any gifts. A pencil, a ruler, anything that has on anything that represents any company, such as Nestle, Good Start, we can't take anything from them as a health institution that is working towards becoming baby friendly, right? No use of the space or equipment or educational material sponsored or produced by companies when teaching mothers about breastfeeding. Or posters cannot be produced from, say, Nestle and has on a Nestle logo on it. We're not supposed to use those kind of posters to promote breastfeeding. Or they might have the information that we would like to teach mothers. We can't be using that poster also. No pictures of infants or other pictures idolizing artificial feeding on the labels of products. For some of the canned food, the formulas, there are some, just as we have our own logo, some of them has on a logo that can depict a mother breastfeeding their babies. That's against the code. All right. Information of artificial feeding, it should include the labels, and it should explain the benefits of breastfeeding, the costs and the dangers associated with artificial feeding. And also the labels on the tins should be in our own language. So those that are coming from foreign countries, they should have English imprinted on them also. So those are just some of the things from the code.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I want to thank you so much. I noted that your team, Protect Breastfeeding in the Workplace, really speaks to the changing role of women. Of course, once ago it was thought that women belonged at home, and that their role was to stay at home, to cook and to wash and to look after children. But your theme speaks to the workplace and the shift that has taken place in now that you are having more women than ever in the workplace.
And healthier babies.
And healthier babies.
The more likely they will be to attend to work.
And the more likely they'll be to attend to work. So that link between breastfeeding and the workplace tells me that, look, we have to protect it. You know, a woman's place is not in the home, no longer, but a woman's place is in the workplace. But that does not mean that breastfeeding has to stop.
Be more productive as well.
You know, so thank you very much. I want to thank you, Nurse Naomi Brown Bill, who is a staff nurse at JNF Hospital Nursery, as well as the breastfeeding coordinator, Nurse Mary Keynes, who is a clinical instructor, and Nurse Jacqueline Duncan, assistant nurse manager of the maternity unit. I want to thank all three of you for coming on this program and for sharing such an important topic, breastfeeding.
And we just want to say thank you for having us.
And you must display your
Yes. Thank you.
right. And it says breastfeeding, what's BFHI? What's
Baby
that?
Friendly Hospital Initiative.
Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative. Exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. And you stress the importance of that. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you, sir.
You have been listening to another edition of Working for You. Thank you very much to our listeners and all of our callers. All of them were men. Interestingly, we were talking about breastfeeding. They have quite an interest in breasts and feeding. So, which is important. We will be back next week with another edition of Working for You. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams.
Working for You. a weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for you is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for you.